A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles. I'm joined today by Gaetano DiNardi. He is the director of DemandGen at Nextiva. Gaetano, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me. It's, I believe, my third time back, so it's a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. We had you on twice before as you were at Sales Hacker episode 644 and 680 for the listeners out there. Gaetano brought a ton of knowledge in both those episodes, so definitely go check those out after you listen to today's conversation. Gaetano is a wealth of knowledge. But Gaetano, for folks who haven't heard you on this show before or followed any of your content, I would love for you to share with listeners what you're up to, and also you made a recent move and what your team at Nextiva is up to these days, man.
Yeah, definitely. For people who know me probably through the Sales Hacker community and network, I spent the last 1 year and 10 months growing that community and that content engine, that publication, if you will, from really kind of a place of, I would say, stagnance, but also transition as the business was pivoting from an event marketing and event-driven company to a digital business. And the long story short is that we took it to a really strong place driven by community and user-generated content. We leveraged that to really grow email list growth, lead generation for over 100 SaaS partners. And most recently this summer, the business was acquired by Outreach.io. And that was like my main mission when I took over marketing at Sales Hacker, was to drive the business to acquisition, which we successfully did in less than 24 months, which I'm really proud of. And it was definitely a team effort. I had a phenomenal team there that really was supportive of all the initiatives that I wanted to drive while at Sales Hacker. And I'm really proud of what we've done there. So after that, I decided that it was kind of time for me to step away from the sales tech space. I was really deep in it for so long prior to Sales Hacker at Pipedrive running SEO. And, I've been effectively doing sales content marketing for the past 4 years straight. And I just felt like it was time to get into a bit of a different vertical, test the waters in some new spaces. And today I'm running demand generation at Nextiva. I'm really proud to be at this company. We service over 150,000 businesses nationwide in the USA. We're over $100 million in revenue annually, and we have over 1,000 employees. So it's quite a change from going from the startup life, 20-person remote company at Sales Hacker, to now nearly 1,200 employees here at Nextiva. But it's been a fun ride, and it's been fascinating. I'm learning a lot, and it feels great to be where I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. followed a lot of your successes at Sales Hacker. We were talking about one of those things that you mentioned in driving web traffic, as you helped Sales Hacker drive more digital demand and digital traffic in one of those previous episodes. Great to hear about what you're doing at Nextiva these days. And that's really what we're going to share today. Wanted to have you share with listeners 4 specific things that you've got top of mind when you're transitioning lessons from marketing at a small startup to a large corporate entity or a larger company, 1,200 employees, as you mentioned, at Nextiva. So let's dive right in there, man. We're going to take startup marketing lessons and apply them to larger organizations. And the first thing I know you wanted to talk about, Gaetano, was that you don't need a big budget to do great work. Tell us a little bit about your experiences there, man.
Yeah, I definitely got to shout out Max Altschuler. He's probably the master of figuring out how to get things done on the cheap and on the very, very efficient level. And, one thing that kind of comes to mind was the stereotype of, they have a lot of money, so they're just going to throw money at problems. And just because they have money to run ads or, they want to, let's say they want to get an ebook done or a white paper done, instead of, buckling down and figuring out how to get that done internally, they're just going to go the easy route and say, yeah, what company or agency or studio out there can we outsource this entire thing to in one shot so we don't need real work? We just kind of give them the strategy and they just kind of run and execute the whole thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but, when you're kind of just spending money for things that you can really be doing internally and potentially delivering a higher quality result for, it's maybe not smart in the long run to be doing that. So one tactical example I can share is right now at Nextiva, we're doing the 2019 State of Business Communication Survey. And my experience of doing a similar project like this at Sales Hacker has really prepared me to do this in an efficient and effective way without having to spend like 50 grand on getting like a big company or PR company or agency to like administer the survey and do the white paper and build it all out. So the way it worked at Sales Hacker was we did co-marketing. We partnered with a company called Lean Data, the State of Revenue Operations Report. We pooled our email list together. We figured out the types of people that we wanted to essentially complete this survey. Once we did that, we also did some crowdsourcing on LinkedIn and ran some giveaways and incentives in order to get the types of people that we wanted to complete this survey. We ended up getting 1,000 responses, which was our goal. And from there, we completed the white paper ourselves. We analyzed the data, we looked at the stats, we determined in collaboration the kind of data and statistical points we wanted to highlight in the white paper. And then we outsourced the design and the execution of that to an agency, but it was pretty low cost for us, and it was just easier to have an outsourced company just do the design and build of the PDF itself. But the majority of the legwork was done internally by us. And, that whole project, it cost us less than like $1,000 to do, which is super cheap. I know for sure that there are companies paying upwards of 40, 50 grand to just do all that work for them. And it's much slower because you have all these other, red tapes and layers and things like that to go through, approvals and processes and all this stuff. But we just, we hit the ground running, we hit the pavement ourselves and got it done. And that's a prime example right there of like, look, do you want to spend $1,000 and do like, a lot of the heavy lifting internally, or do you want to spend 50 grand, outsource it all, do no work, but it's going to take you probably a lot longer to do? That's one of the, the trade-offs that you got to make if you're in a big company versus a small company. But it's one learning that I applied from SMB to a big company today.
Yeah. So, to the first point that you don't have to have a big budget to do great work, the flip side of that then is also true. Just because, if you move into a role where all of a sudden you have a large budget, doesn't mean that everything you do is just going to be gold just because you throw money at it. So you still have to take that same analytical approach to, okay, what way are we going to approach this? What are we going to do internally versus what we're going to outsource? What channel is going to be best for this versus another, right?
Mm-hmm. Like that's another thing you realize at a big company too. Like when things need to be promoted, for example, everyone's just like, hey, can we run some ads on this? Or like, oh, hey, let's do a press release, guys. Yeah, let's get our PR company to do it. And it's like, all right, like why? Like what do you want to happen? Like what's the point? Like could you get the same visibility on this if you did some LinkedIn content promotion or some like a LinkedIn video takeover? Like this is another example. A lot of big companies today on LinkedIn, especially, they still don't get that you can spend money on LinkedIn ads via your company page, and it's just not really going to get the kind of engagement and spark that, like, let's say a prominently known CEO or a prominently known VP of marketing that has a strong personal brand is going to have on their personal profile promoting something. Because, it's just really human nature. Humans want to follow humans. Like, we're tribal, like from the inception of like mankind, like we're tribal. Humans follow humans. Right. Humans don't necessarily follow like brands. So like when you see like, big brand XYZ page on LinkedIn running, paid ads to some white paper, it's like, maybe you'll get some leads, maybe it'll work out, you'll probably get some return on investment, but at the end of the day, you're going to lose like that authenticity factor because, you could have had somebody at your company building a voice, building a strong personal brand by doing offsite, content marketing, of course, obviously LinkedIn marketing every day in your feed and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it just goes back to the point of like at Sales Hacker, we had to find ways to get things done efficiently and organically rather than just saying, hey, what's the easiest thing we can do, which is let's just throw $5,000 into promoting an ebook on LinkedIn ads. Like, it's a give and take.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, as we were talking about this offline, that you also mentioned, Gaetano, was, bringing this mentality of not only, stretching your marketing dollars or at least very closely analyzing your ROI on the things that you're doing and why you're doing them. I love the way you put that. But also bringing this mentality of being nimble and agile and the ability to pivot quickly. How have you found that you've been able to bring that mentality, or what would you say to marketers at larger organizations that maybe are struggling to bring that mentality to their own organizations?
Yeah, dude, I see it all the time. And like, it's, you see this in reports that come out from like Gartner and Forrester and stuff. But like one of the top problems still to this day is that marketers are having a really hard time really connecting the dots back to ROI of their spend and their investments and their marketing activities. If you're a startup, you're going to be much more frugal and much more aware of like where you're putting money because you don't have as many channels to play around with. You don't have as much money to play around with. And you really got to make sure that every single dollar is being spent wisely and is going to provide value coming back in. Whereas like with a big company, it's like, we got all this money, we got room to test, new advertising activities on new channels, or we have, money and bandwidth and space to try new things. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the example I want to give you is, something like breaking down AdWords versus, let's say, sponsoring a webinar, right? With AdWords, it's very black and white. It's, for example, you bid on a keyword that gets, let's say, 100,000 monthly searches. Let's say you bid $1 per click. The cost per click on that particular search is $1 per click. You get 10,000 clicks on that a month. You spend $10,000. Let's say you get a 10% click to lead rate. That would be essentially 1,000 leads out of those 10,000 clicks. And let's just say you can convert 10% of those 1,000 leads. That means it costs you $10,000 to get 100 new customers. Now, you obviously have to do the long-term analysis of this and figure out, all right, what's the payback period? What's the churn? Do those 100 new customers that come in from AdWords end up being more qualified to stick around for a LM? Is there more stickiness with this AdWords channel than another channel? But let's say you know for sure with AdWords, you can spend $10,000 to get 100 new customers, which is pretty good. Then let's say you sponsor a webinar, $10,000, same cost. But then there's all these variables. The partner that you're working with, you got to figure out, all right, what's the size of their list? What's their list look like? What's the engagement of that list look like? How many email sends are they going to do? How many people are going to show up to that webinar? What kind of resonating with that audience? What kind of segment of that audience really cares about the particular product or service you may be driving awareness to? So let's say if a company has 100,000 subscribers on their email list, maybe, you'll get 500 to 1,000 respondents for a webinar if it's a really good topic with maybe even a prominent thought leader that has a decent personal brand. But then out of that 500 to 1,000, how many are truly, marketing qualified leads out of that? Just because somebody showed up to a webinar to get some information on how to sell better doesn't necessarily mean they're interested in the product. So, when you do the math, you might figure out that like sponsoring a $10,000 webinar only led to, let's say 5 new customers. But maybe those 5 new customers ended up spending way more money, bigger ACV, longer lifetime value. So, this thing is a chess match. It's not a checkers game. You really got to take the time to figure out, like, we're spending all this effort and time and money and sweat into all these different things. It feels good on surface level to say, progress is being made, things are moving, our brand is getting more recognition. But really, we're talking dollars to donuts here, baby. We got to figure out, what's the return? So, these are the things that, like, if you're at a big company, you can't just think about, sinking $10,000 into something that is like a black hole. You got to really be aware of what's going on.
I love it. So the other thing I know you wanted to share on Gaetano is a little bit different, but still has this same theme kind of running through it, in that as you are part of a smaller team, if you're looking at campaigns or what you're going to do, you're thinking about what is the return on the spend that we're going to get. And the third thing I know you wanted to talk about was that people are still the most important thing, that when you're hiring, you still have to take that analytical approach, that almost do or die approach to that new hire on your marketing team, just like you did in a startup, right?
Totally, man. I mean, you got to hire as if it's do or die, no matter what stage your company is at. And I think there's like a double-edged sword to this in many ways. With startups, like, you can't afford to make a bad hire. The amount of money that you lose on that is just so, it could almost potentially even sink the company if it's like too early of a, let's say you hire like a VP of sales too early and he or she just sinks really bad, or a VP of marketing that's terrible. That could be devastating to a startup. If you're a big company, you want to hire people that are going to stay for life. Really, like if you're like I'm just going to throw some names out there, but let's just say you're like a Marketo or something, or an Adobe, right? Adobe, I think, just acquired them.
Right.
Adobe's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? It's all these little startup companies that are going to get swallowed up at some point. But the loyalty that you see in the startup realm is not that good, because there's a lot of turbulence in startup world. So like, there's a high chance that like somebody's going to stay with you for like maybe 6 months to a year, then bounce and go somewhere else to try to level up. So with big company hiring, you want to try to find people that are going to be around for life. Like, you don't want to find people that are going to bounce around or are just looking for like, the next thing or whatever. You want to try to like build a long lasting team. And with me personally, I finally at Nextiva, I feel like I'm going to be somewhere for potentially like the rest of my career. This is a great place. And, I don't want to bounce around. I really want to try to master my game. And a place like this is where you want to do that.
Yeah, I love it, man. So the last thing I know you wanted to touch on to wrap this conversation up was, if you are making a similar move to like what you just experienced, Gaetano, going from startup land to a larger company, don't assume that all the processes and the ways of going about things are already all mapped out and they're just intrinsically better because it's a bigger company, right?
Yeah, man. Is that stereotype too? Like, when you talk to people that have been in startups their whole life and you ask them if they want to go work for a big company, they'll tell you, nah, too much red tape, man, too many processes. Like, I don't want to go there. But you'd be surprised at how many companies, especially very fast growing ones, like Nextiva, for example, very, very fast growing, from 0 to over 1,000 employees in about 9 years. Like, that's pretty fast growth. And what you'll see, especially what I've seen in the marketing team, we're a team of overseers. And the things that I spent a lot of time building processes on at Sales Hacker, things like content promotion checklists, like when something new comes out that has to be promoted, what has to happen, in what order, who is responsible, what's the timeline, what are the deliverables, like all these things that have to just kind of work like clockwork at a startup because you have to be efficient. You'd be surprised how many big companies ain't got that. You'd be very surprised. So like, even like, with event marketing, like here's another example of like not understanding where your spend is going and what you're getting return out of that. A lot of big companies, especially that are trying to break into the enterprise, buyers who are really difficult to get, they happen to invest a lot in events. And what you'll notice is like they're doing so many events, and like probably like 10 a month. And it's a mix of small, medium, and big. And when you find out, like, all right, so we invested $5,000 in that one lunch and learn, like what was the return on that? And like no one knows. It's like then you got to figure out, okay, pre-event, like all this stuff has to happen, checklist style, boom, 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 boom. Here's who's responsible by when, how, all that stuff. Then during the event, that's like when you have to coordinate a lot between sales and marketing. Salespeople can't just think that you're going to show up at an event, get people to come to your booth and get their little, badge scanned, and it's, you call it a day. It doesn't work like that, baby. And then post-event too, it's like the number one mistake I see is like, you get your badge scanned right after, you just get like a generalized blast, and that's like kind of
right.
it. They maybe hammer you with email, but like that's another thing with process. Like a lot of these big companies, they don't even have like a formalized process around events. They're just like, yeah, we know events kind of work, and like the sales team really likes doing them, so like we should just keep doing them. But we don't really have a process around like how to engage lead after events the right way. We don't really have a process around like having our enterprise reps book meetings before the event, researching who's going to be there, like putting time on people's calendar before the event starts, like all this stuff that's like 101 in that startup land, you absolutely have to master, because you can't get a CEO or a finance officer or whoever is running the money at a startup to approve any of this stuff unless they plan to go with it. Whereas like a bigger company, they have more money. They're like, yeah, that sounds good. I think we can get some leads out of that. Let's try it, see how it goes. Then, you go 6 months, a year now, and it's like, hey, what's happening? Yeah, we're still trying it.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Well, damn, I mean, good luck. So that's another takeaway I'll give you.
I love that. I mean, it sounds like, to your point, marketers moving into large companies or part of, more corporate organizations might be frustrated or thinking there's going to be more red tape, but maybe the stakes are a little bit higher because you do have that 10 grand to spend at the drop of a hat, where you wouldn't in startup world. But behind the curtains, it's still the same. You still need to be analytical about your approach. You still need to learn from the things that you try. You still need to be thoughtful about how you implement them and how you implement the analytics, how you implement, looking at what worked and what didn't. And I think that's the common theme. If you are on a marketing team of 2 or 200, all of these concepts apply, and it's really the same game. You just might be playing a little bit larger stakes, actually in one or the other, right? Because that $10,000 means more to the startup, even though maybe you're spending it more often in the corporate world. I love these, Gaetano, and like I said, I think that common theme through here is something that a lot of marketers, I think, are going to find value in. If anybody listening to this who isn't connected to you yet online, what's the best way for them to reach out, man?
Just go to LinkedIn, search Gaetano DiNardi. You'll see me in there. I'm all over the place. So hit me up.
/official G, right?
Yeah. I always got to try to stand out a little bit. So it's, if you want to go to the URL, it's got to put my New York swag on everything, man. It's linkedin.com/in/official G.
That's perfect, man. Not that it would be too hard to find you. Just searching Gaetano DiNardi. I'm sure if you just Google your name, your LinkedIn profile is the first thing that comes up, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, Gaetano, this has been great, man. Third time on the show. My first time to interview you. It has been a blast. I really appreciate you coming back on the show, man.
Thanks, Logan. You're great. James is great. Huge fan of the B2B Growth Show. You guys are always putting value out, actionable content. You have great guests all the time. And for anyone listening for the first time, I would highly recommend you subscribe, leave a positive review on iTunes and Stitcher for James and Logan, man. You guys are great, and keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. You are too kind. Well, this has been great, Gaetano. I appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Have a great day, brother.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time. Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.